Welcome back to Nikki's Scrapbooking Adventures. Today we're doing Calling Creatives and we have a special guest. We have Scylla. Hey, Scylla.
Hello,
And Scylla, will you tell us your YouTube channel again?
it's Scylla Choice Bits of Bliss.
Perfect. And then we've got Melanie. Hi, Melanie.
Hi, everyone. I'm so glad to be back, and I can't wait for today's conversation.
Yes, so today we're going to talk about traveling prompts. Last month, we gave you examples of essentials, and both Melanie and I went totally different directions with our prompts and with our projects. Well, this month we're going to talk about traveling. Melanie, do you want to start off with a prompt?
Sure, I definitely can do that. So I kind of took this as travel slash vacations because I know not everybody necessarily travels, but I know everybody does take some time off every now and then. So what I thought would be fun to document is like a highlights page of all the places you've been, or maybe all the places you've camped at, or maybe all your local places that you like to visit during the summer, for instance, when you're off, that kind of thing. And maybe just give a little bit of why you like those places as part of the journaling.
Oh, I love that idea, having a little bit of an overview. To piggyback, one of my prompts is, what's the place that you frequent most?
Oh, that's a good one. That would be tough. That would be a tough one for me to come up with.
Scylla, do you have a prompt that you would like to share?
Sure. The first one that came to mind is the benefits of travel, the different ways that it can expand your mind, your just being able to see different cultures. And even if that is near home, not everyone reacts to the world the same way. It's a good eye opener.
I love that.
I love that idea. And I think you could really delve quite deeply into that, especially if you are someone that has traveled. What would also be interesting is to talk about how your thoughts about travel has changed over time. So, for instance, we were talking before this conversation started recording about how I'm not loving traveling so much like I used to. And it would be interesting to factor in, like, why has that changed over time? Right?
Yeah, kind of piggybacking off though, like what causes you to travel? Is it work? Is it vacation? Is it family? In my instance, the only real reason I travel is family. You know, you go to see the people that are oldest in your family because they're not going to be around as much as the people who are younger. So we always try to make it a priority to see the grandmas and grandpas.
That's really important to document. Absolutely.
That is super heartfelt.
Yeah. Now, Scylla, you travel a lot for work, right?
I do.
And I think in one of your recent videos, you were talking about how you and your husband are going to explore traveling a little bit more.
Our priorities have definitely changed, and we are looking more at the things that don't bring us value in our everyday lives, save money on those so that we can have the finances ready to travel to further afield.
Are you going to document that at all in your scrapbooking, or is that not something you tend to lean towards?
Oh, absolutely. I love to go into the deeper stories. I don't always share it on my channel, but in my personal scrapbooks, I do go into those deeper stories because I want my children to know who I am and the things that pushed me and that drove me in my life.
That is great. I love that idea of really getting into why you're doing what you're doing. So that's a good prompt, Nikki. See, you didn't think it was very deep, but there's a lot more there to it if you just, you just look below the surface. Now, do you find, Nikki, that you're traveling much at all anymore? Like, how often would you go visit your family members?
So we try to go twice a year to visit family members. And that's what we've been doing for the last like 8 years. Our first vacation, that was like just Joe and I, because we also have a son, was for our anniversary last year, and it was a day trip. So it's like not even really a vacation, but we did travel to Des Moines to go water rafting. That was fun.
That's cool. So, okay, so kind of stemming off this a little bit, I of course, don't live near my family. So I really should go and visit them more often. And there's a little bit of guilt associated with not visiting them as much. Do any of you guys have that?
I don't live near my family either. So yeah, I understand the guilt aspect.
Yeah, I probably should document that too, like why I feel guiltier and why I don't feel like I should have to travel there all the time. But I don't know. That one's pretty personal. It could hurt some feelings too if, the wrong person were to read the journaling. So I'm not sure about that one.
We've tried to convince our family to come down to us because we're more central, and my sister and I both live in the same area. So it's like a 2-for-1.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, that's what happens with me is because I'm the outlier, right? Everybody lives within 10, 15 minutes of each other. So it's always like, you come here so that you can visit everybody. And it's like, yeah, doesn't always work out quite so, so good. But anyway, so I was thinking more again, because, I'm in this reflective state of mind about past vacations, or more specifically, summer vacation when you were a child. And I thought it would be fun to document all your favorite activities that you did during the summer as a child.
Love it.
The only problem is I don't have a lot of photos.
But that's okay. That's what the journaling part is for, right? Is for you to be able to still tell your story, even if you don't have a photo. They have cut apart cards. You can place that there as a photo instead.
Right. Yeah, that's true. That would work. I'm also thinking maybe I could do something like Google bicycles or something like that, and maybe find a picture of a bike that I used to like, something similar to a bike that I maybe rode when I was a kid.
Yeah, I had a prompt here. What do you remember about traveling as a child? I don't have a very good memory, but I always remember sitting in the back seat and falling asleep on the road.
That's pretty common for kids, I think, right? Falling asleep on long trips. Stella, have you ever documented your childhood at all?
I come from a huge family. I have 10 brothers and sisters. So we did not travel a lot. And so my memories would probably be more about childhood memories of things we did, like running around barefoot, chasing fireflies, those sort of memories, playing hide and seek after dark, because it was easier to hide those things. But, I was thinking that when you were talking about the prompt, that those would be good, even though we don't have the photos, to use those story-based pages. And the first kit that came in my mind, or collection, is One Canoe Two. Because they had
funny with the fire, with the lightning bugs. Yeah, that would be a perfect paper to tell that story. For sure.
I'm saving mine specifically for a story about lightning bugs.
So now comes the debate. Is it lightning bugs or is it firefly?
Both
for sure. In the South, it's lightning bugs is what we call them. But I try to say fireflies because I think that's more universally recognized.
Okay. No,
nah,
it's always lightning.
Yeah, I'm from the North, so I feel like that is still universal, even if it's the South. Like Wisconsin to I don't know where you are, but lightning bugs is a thing.
Yeah.
Now, One Canoe Two is not around anymore, right?
No.
Yeah, I think they only put out a couple lines, didn't they?
I can only remember 3 or 3.
Yeah, and I'm not sure. For some reason, I think that it was that they were more of a like a household paper crafting company, and they branched into the scrapbooking world. I could be wrong on that, but I thought that wasn't their main line of business. But maybe I'm wrong.
I think you're correct about that.
Yeah, yeah. It's been a while. Well, speaking of, childhood activities similar to you, so I come from a large family, not quite as large, but pretty large. And we did a lot of camping, but we did a lot of camping in the campground in our town, right? So we literally didn't go anywhere, but it felt enough of a variation that it felt like it was something special. And that was just so my dad could continue to work. So he would come down and join us in the evenings or whatever. But yeah. Everybody's got something different about their childhood that was unique to them. And I think everybody could have some sort of stories of how they spent their summer vacations. Definitely different than kids nowadays. Because let me tell you, we got on our bike and we were gone all day.
Right. The kids nowadays just want to stay inside and play their stupid video games instead of going outside and riding their bike.
Yeah, but also, would you let your kid just go and ride their bike everywhere?
Around my block, I feel safe.
Yeah, I guess it depends where you live and what city, town, etc. Okay, Scylla, what's your next prompt?
So this is going a very different direction, but I always think about this when we're packing and getting to the airport and getting on the plane, how uncomfortable travel is, and that it takes you out of your comfort zone. but there's the payoff for it, to go through all of these really uncomfortable things to get to the vacation portion. But that's something that I actually have documented, is the challenges.
Oh, that's a great idea. I don't think I've ever documented that specifically addressing challenges. I've included stories like when I have traveled of some challenges, but I think that's a really good idea to kind of do almost what's the word I'm thinking of, where you weigh the pros and cons, right? So here's the cons of travel, here's the pros, and hopefully the pros outweigh the cons. At least they should, hopefully.
Right.
So have you done that for personal as well as for work?
I have just done it for personal. I haven't done it for work, but it seems like there's something always happens. There's a flight delayed or canceled. There's always something that happens.
Yeah.
Then when you're in the middle of it, you're just like, oh my gosh, is it even worth it? But then you get there and it's just like, yay, that's awesome now.
Yeah, it's the getting to that is the problem most times, isn't it? It's just the getting there.
Yes.
Okay, so we're talking about like the things that are hard during the traveling process. So during the prep time or during the traveling, what do you do to pass the time? I always try to play a game, the ABC game where you try to find the letters on, which we drive a lot. I'm in a culture like if it's 8 hours, we're driving. So flights delaying and that kind of thing are just not an issue. But trying to stay awake while driving is hard. So what do you do to pass the time? I listen to audiobooks, I play the ABC game, that kind of thing. What do you guys do?
So we've done the for a driving one, we've done the license plates where you try to see if you can find every single state, license plate as you're traveling. And especially if you're going to places like national parks and stuff like that, you'd be amazed at how many people drive from all over the country and what you end up seeing there. It's kind of fun. And that would be a fun one to document. I think it's a Simple Stories line that was put out recently that has a whole page of license plate images on it. You guys know which one I'm talking about?
I'm not sure. I haven't bought any travel lines very often.
Oh, I have a ton of it. I can't remember what the name of the line is, but it's got license plates on it, but it says things like let's travel or, something travel themed on the plate. But that would be totally fun to document, what you saw on your trip as far as license plates go. Anyways, that's just something that we do. I also do mental math. Now this is going to bring out the nerd in me. And I say, when you're driving, and you see how many miles to the next place, I mentally figure out how long it's going to take me to get there if I drive at different speeds so that I can, see how close I am when I get there. I know, I'm a nerd.
That's what your phone is for, Melody.
But you're driving. How can you put it in your phone? I guess you could ask Siri.
Maps. Google Maps tells you how long it's going to take you to get there.
Yeah, but that's going the speed limit. Maybe I'm old as well as nerdy.
One of the games that we played was Punch Bug. Have you heard of that?
Oh, yeah.
When you see the little Volkswagen bugs and you punch. Well, yeah. I have a brother, so they love to do the punching thing.
And that never escalated into a full-on fight?
Oh, come on. Quietly, because my dad couldn't see where he was going if we were loud. So yeah. So we had to fight quietly.
Well, I don't say it punch bug, it's slug bug. Slug bug, no slug back.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I don't think I've ever heard that one. I've heard punch bug, but not slug bug. Interesting. My dad used to threaten to build partitions in the back seat so that we couldn't see or touch each other.
Oh my goodness.
Can you imagine? Oh, kids.
Life of an only child.
Yeah, you'd never experienced any of that, huh? So the next one I thought was to write about a vacation or a holiday or, something like that didn't go as expected. So, what happened? How did you feel? What did you learn? How did you adjust? So I was thinking this kind of ties into the fact that you had told me before we started this conversation that you weren't interested in going back to Greece. And I thought that would be a good prompt for you to document about why, like what was it about Greece that didn't meet your expectations, or was it seen it once, it was good, that kind of thing?
A little bit of multi-layered for sure. Seen it once, I'm good with it. It was super, super hot. They were having a weather issue where the wind was extremely high. my husband and we're chunky people, and the wind was literally moving us.
Wow.
It was very, very windy. Another aspect of it is we were talking about not being like the huge crowds and everything. Greece we learned this while we were there, 60% of their economy is based off of travel and off of the tourism. So that means huge crowds, and it's hard. Like, you have this beautiful vista, you're seeing things that you've never seen before, but there's always these crowds of people, these just throngs of people on every street. It doesn't matter how much you're having to climb up to get to a place to see or to eat, or the shopping is very, very tourist driven or at the ports. And it was just a lot of different things about it that I thought, okay, I'm glad I did it, but I'm not really interested in going again.
Right. So are you going to document that?
Yes.
Yeah. I think that's good to know, right? Because a lot of times when we hear people or we hear stories of people when they travel, it's always how amazing it is, right? Like how you need to go and see this place, but they don't always tell you the not so great side of things, right? Or they do tell you when it's extremely bad.
Right.
But just the average, yeah, it's cool to go there, but be prepared. There's going to be a ton of people. You need to watch out for pickpockets constantly. You need to, understand that your pictures are always going to be filled with people that you don't know, et cetera, et cetera.
I'd never even considered going to Greece. Now I'm like, maybe I don't ever want to. Oh man, too many people.
Well, that's pretty much
Okay.
any top tourist place. You're going to have crowds nowadays, it feels like. The key is to maybe try and go off season, but then of course you usually deal with weather that's not always so nice.
One of my bucket list places is Japan. So speaking of my prompt, what is on your bucket list? Japan is, and there's so many people there that I'm like, do I even really want to go? Yes, I really want to go, but I'm going to have to plan my trip accordingly. Make sure that I go on the off season. Maybe instead of going always to Tokyo, go to some of the smaller provinces around, that kind of thing. But do you guys have bucket list places you want to go?
I do. I want to see New Zealand for sure.
New Zealand is beautiful.
What turned you on to New Zealand?
Way back in the 80s, I think it was, there was a movie called The Man from Snowy River, I believe.
Yep.
The scenery in that movie just lit a fire in me. And ever since, I have wanted to see New Zealand.
Nikki, have you ever heard of The Man from Snowy River?
No.
I didn't think so. I think there's like 2 or 3 movies, I think, if I remember correctly on that.
So.
Yeah. It was a pretty big movie for us teenage girls way back in the day. Yeah. But yeah, New Zealand is absolutely gorgeous. You definitely should make that on your bucket list if you haven't, especially if you love outdoors. There's lots of opportunities to explore there for sure. So I have to admit, Nikki, we actually were on the same wavelength, because that was my next prompt, was document your bucket list of places you want to visit and why, and if you have plans to actually enact them. So look at us. Maybe we are starting to think more alike.
Oh man, Melanie, you never told us what was on your bucket list.
I'm kind of disillusioned with travel right now. I don't really want to go any. So it's just a general bucket list kind of thing. I would say Europe in general. I haven't seen a lot of Europe. Well, really, I've been to Barcelona and I've been to the Netherlands. That's really about it. So definitely like Italy, I'd like to go to France, Paris at least once, although I have a suspicion Paris might be like your Greece, Scylla, where it may not quite live up to what everybody makes it up to be, just because of other conversations I've heard from people. So I don't know, but I have to go and see it at least once, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm. I would love to do actually. So now you get me going. So maybe I'm not as disillusioned with travel. I really would like to see some of the Scandinavian countries, to be honest, Norway, Denmark, Sweden, up that way. I think that would be kind of cool. And I kind of would like to see Iceland.
I've heard it's beautiful. Absolutely stunning.
Yeah, and they've got some really good deals right now with airfare, like relatively inexpensive, although I've heard Iceland is very expensive. So once you get there, yeah, because they basically have to import everything, right? So it's a little pricey, but anyways, if I have time and opportunity, those are the things that are on my list. But I've since learned not to kind of count on anything, because whenever I do it, it never happens and I end up going someplace completely different. So case in point, when I lived in Australia, I was like, okay, my next trip is going to be England, Ireland, Scotland, right? Like that's where I'm going. Okay. 24 years later, I've been to a small part of England and I haven't seen the rest. I've been back to Australia 8 times. So I don't know. I don't know why, but it seems like whenever I voice what I want to see, I never end up seeing it. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
That's funny. Okay, Melanie, next prompt.
Well, you took my next one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So I'll give you my last one and we'll go from there. But what I thought would be fun is to document your favorite people that you like to vacation with. So if you travel or camp with certain people over and over again, who are those people and what makes them such a great travel partner or travel friends or whatever? If you want to go a little bit more on the negative side, you could document your least favorite people to travel with. You know, I guess it depends if they're still in your life or not. And if you want them to see it, that one might be a little bit on the risky side. But yeah, I found that I've had a few people over the years that I have traveled with, and it takes special people to be able to travel with, you know, and get along and like the same things and that kind of stuff. So I thought that would be interesting to document.
I was more of a spontaneous traveler when I was younger, you know, spring break in college. We just drove from Iowa to Arkansas with no plan whatsoever. And that was like the best trip we've ever had.
Yeah. And did you just do that with your college friends then?
Just my husband and I. At the time, he was my boyfriend. So we just like Googled the cheapest hotel and stayed there in Branson and did similar things in all the other cities that we visited. But it was so fun.
How about you, Scylla? Have you traveled with anyone other than your husband and your kids?
I have with family, and we have with other couples a couple of times. And it's an interesting dynamic. I think it's important if you're going to travel with others to set like loose expectations, because everyone has their own ideas of what is fun or what they want to experience. And so just kind of, you know, merging that together to have one experience is, it can be extremely fun, but it is a challenge, that is for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I thought if you did have someone, or you did find some like another couple or whatever that works really well, it would be fun to just kind of honor that. But the other thing would be, I guess if you could spin off of this, is what do you like to do when you travel? Like, do you have a specific likes or dislikes? Like, for instance, maybe your husband loves seeing museums, you're not so much, and you'd rather go shopping, but you could document some of that and how you balance that off between each other when you travel. More the dynamics on relationships, I guess, is kind of what this prompt is about.
One of my prompts is the art of traveling light, and we can take that physically with not taking so much stuff, and we can also take that psychologically by just letting go of the stress of life and just having a really bright and open mindset going into the vacation or travel.
So how would you approach the documenting of that?
So I always go back to Lel Concar because she does the list. So to travel light, make a list of bare essentials to what you would need. And remember that, you know, you can, wherever you're going, you can wash clothes. You don't have to take an outfit for every single occasion, for every single day. There's ways to really, truly travel light, and there's an art to it. I haven't mastered it, but I want to learn because I do want to travel more.
Right. Yeah. And you'll find that the more you travel, the less you have to lug around luggage, the better, because it gets old really quick. And especially if you travel in places like Europe where they have older buildings, they don't necessarily always have elevators. If you got to lug your 50-pound suitcase up, you know, 3 or 4 flights of stairs, you'll learn pretty quick that traveling light is beneficial. So how would you document more the psychological traveling light?
I would, because this is how my brain tends to turn. I tend to go a little deeper. I would definitely document how the stress of work, you know, the lead up, the things that had to be accomplished to get to the point where you can take off. projects that needed to be completed, just, or if there's personal things going on, just being able to have that soul reset and just say, okay, we're shutting all of that down. And now it's time to go into vacation mode. And then I would definitely talk about that. Just, the things that I have to do to reset. For me, it's quiet time. I need some quiet time to just allow myself to hear my own thoughts.
Okay. I like the idea even of just documenting, almost like, let me put all the stresses on paper, get it down, and now it's done. And I can go and enjoy my vacation. I love that.
One thing we always do is clean our house before we leave so we can come home to a clean house.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, because there's nothing worse than coming home to a house that's in disarray, right? You're like, oh man, that's like a slap in the face from vacation, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I usually do that. Like I try and have everything cleaned, before I leave, that kind of stuff. So one time I came home, the apartment was clean before I left, but I came home, I opened the door. Now my apartment has an in-suite washer and dryer, and it's right by the front entrance behind closet doors. So I open the door and there's this blue sticky mess all over the floor. So I don't know if we had an earthquake or what had happened, but the bottle of liquid detergent had fallen off the shelf and landed on the washing machine, split open, and everything had drained. It was all the way down the sides of the washing machine on the floor. Oh, it was, yeah. So
how do you even clean that? It's so sticky. It never comes off anything.
Well, and it's soap, right? You add water, it just gets sudzier.
Yeah.
Just keeps going.
Yeah, I ended up just scraping most of it, like just trying to scrape it and pick it, then trying to wipe it up because it just took forever. But I'm sure today, if you were to pull the washing machine and dryer out, you probably would still see some residue on the side because I couldn't get to it. Anyways, clean house is a good thing to do before you go for travel.
Stella, do you have one more prompt or a couple more?
I had a couple of more because we're a little bit of foodies. So just being able to document all the meals that, like, especially if you're trying new and different things, documenting those.
And we all love taking pictures of food, right? Well, I shouldn't speak for everybody, but I have my fair share of meals documented in my camera. I love doing that when I've gone on a cruise, and I will often just do a summary, not a summary page, but like a big 2-page spread at the end with all the pictures of all the food together, just to kind of, show the variety. But do you actually go in and talk about each of the meals that you've eaten, or like what you liked about them, that kind of stuff?
If there's something remarkable about them, yes, I do. And one of the things that happened to us, or happened to me, my husband knew about it. I wasn't expecting my food to stare at me. So I ordered a seafood linguine, and it came with eyeballs on it. And I told him, I said, I can't eat this. And so he was gracious enough to trade with me, and he picked the meat out so that I could eat some of it without it looking at me.
Nope. Nope. I refuse to eat seafood because it looks too much like a crab leg, or I just can't. Mussels, gross. Nope.
It's funny how it's such a psychological thing, isn't it? Whether you're, it's not that you don't know that they didn't have eyeballs, but just seeing it there makes it completely different, doesn't it?
I bought chicken wings to make like bat wings out of, so they had bones in them. Well, they didn't pluck all the feathers out of the chicken, so I threw the whole thing away. I was like, nope, not doing that.
Wow. That quality control was not on that one.
Nope, not at all.
The last one I had was just your expectations going into travel, documenting that. And I think that was touched on earlier.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really good thing to do before you leave, and almost have it as like the start of your travel documenting, especially if you do separate albums for a trip. How fun would it be to have, this is what I'm looking forward to seeing, and this is what I'm expecting to get out of it. And then at the end, do one like a wrap up, like, was it everything that I was hoping it to be? That would be kind of fun.
That's a good idea. I hadn't thought about that side of it. Yeah. That would be good.
Do you do separate albums for trips, or do you just incorporate it into your regular scrapbooks?
In the past, especially when I was traveling with my boys, that was just part of our family scrapbooks. But now, and I've dealt with this on my channel some, I'm in a different season and phase of scrapbooking because I have so much stuff. I have so much inventory, and the more pages you scrap, the more albums you have to buy, and it just becomes more and more and more. So I'm trying to think of ways and lean into ways that condenses that. So I'm thinking maybe some 6x8 albums for travel because they don't take up so much space.
Right. And so then, each trip would get its own, or are you thinking just that you would have like an ongoing album of different trips?
That each trip gets its own.
Yeah. How about you, Nikki? I know you don't do a ton of traveling, but you have a trip that you're working on, I think, right?
Yeah. So last year we went to Memphis to see my brother. Again, we travel to see family, right? But we made a vacation out of it because it was 5 days. And I made a traveler's notebook with all of our plans in it prior to. So it listed how long it would take to get to each location, what hotel we're staying at, how much money it was. And then each night I made sure to document what we had done that day. So I made a 8x8 album with that, and it's just pictures because pretty much all of my journaling is in the traveler's notebook.
And are you just going to include the traveler's notebook separate, or is it?
It's in the 8x8 album.
Oh, like you just put it in a sleeve or something like that? Okay, cool.
Yep. And that's actually a video on my YouTube channel. So I'll link that in the upper right-hand corner if anybody wants to check that out.
And I'm going to ask a nosy question. How did you cull down your photos? Because that's what I'm about to face.
I get that. I picked my favorites. Honestly, I don't have that hard of a time going down to the number of photos I want because, I want to make sure I get the people in it. I want to make sure to at least have one photo of each thing that we did. Maybe I took more. And so then I'll go through and like pick my favorites. We went to Graceland and I made sure that that activity had multiple pages. So I didn't have to cull down all of the photos that I needed to.
So are you more strategic? Like when you take photos, are you already thinking about how you're going to scrapbook them?
The time I forget to take photos, which is horrible, right? Like I'm a scrapbooker,
Yeah.
I should be taking all the photos. But like I was thinking about it, 4th of July was just the beginning of the month and I've got maybe 1 or 2 photos.
Okay, so that helps that you're not coming back from a trip with 5,000 photos maybe.
Right.
Yeah. How about you, Scylla? Are you like, do you kind of go into the trip and are very strategic in how you take photos, or are you like a snap with abandon and I'll sort it out later kind of person?
The latter, for sure. That's why I asked that question, because I love the 12x12 real estate. Because you can get a lot of photos on there. And if you shrink down your photos, you can get even more on, include more. And so now that I'm considering going down to a smaller size, I need to be strategic. And so I'm going to have to start thinking differently about that.
Right. So I love the art of taking photos. So I love to take multiple photos of the same thing from different angles and, capture it from different ways. So it's almost like 2 hobbies in one, right? Because then I get the pictures back and I'm like, oh, I really love these photos because of the way that they're taken. But I don't need all of those photos to document the story, right? So I think this is along your lines, Scylla, where it's like, well, how do I pick? I love them all. How do I pick which one is the best one? And I don't always know the answer to that. So sometimes it's just, you just pick one and you move forward. Now, I almost always, when I go on a trip, do a separate album. And then I also have in my chronological album, my day-to-day album, I will do a 2-page spread. And so sometimes how I get around it is the ones that I still love but didn't pick for the mini album, let's say, is I'll put them in the 2-page spread. So, but that only works with so many photos, right? Like at some point you're going to run out of real estate.
True, but that is a good idea.
Yeah.
Because that lets you include more of those memories.
Yeah, and then they're spread out, and I like in my chronological album to have a representation of it in there. so that you know that that did happen. But I don't like putting my whole trips in there because it just takes up too much real estate. You know what I mean? And so this way, if I want to look at the trip, I can pull those albums off. And if I'm just looking at my year, it's there, but I don't feel the need to go back. And to be honest, at the end of all of this, most of my travel albums are not going to mean anything to anyone, right? But maybe someone will appreciate a 2-page spread versus a whole mini album. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
It would be cool if museums held people's scrapbooks, because it truly is documenting the current times, right? Like if we could donate our scrapbooks to museums, I think that'd be really cool.
Well, they probably will have one at some point it'll be the Scrapbook Museum, the early years.
Takes off into another tangent, but the rarity, I think, is going to become more rare of people actually printing their photos.
Yeah.
It's already not a super common thing, but it's going to become, I think, even more rare. And having a pictorial representation of how a city looked in our era, that's going away.
Yeah, well, because maintaining the digital aspect of all the photos that are out there is a different kind of preservation, because technology is constantly changing. So if you've got a JPEG file, who knows in 50 years from now if there'll still be programs around that will read them, right? So people are thinking, oh, I've got all these photos and they're going to be around indefinitely, and they might not. Not to mention the fact the storage devices that you're storing them on may or may not survive. Like, how often haven't you had an external hard drive that just all of a sudden stops working, right? You've lost everything that's on there. I've heard a sentiment or a saying that basically today's generation is the most photographed, but will have the least amount of photos when they go to look for them. Because the other part is that we have such a high volume of photos that people just store them somewhere, and there's no organization to them. People don't know where they're stored. So mom or dad passes away. How do you access them? Where do you find them? Did you even know that they existed? So yeah, you're right. It's going to be interesting what'll happen. And maybe we'll have a resurgence of scrapbooking then.
I hope so. So, okay, on Wednesday, we're going to talk about purging, and all three of us have recently done some purging, so we're going to talk kind of an overview about that. Make sure to play along with our traveling prompts. If you have any traveling prompts, make sure to list them down in the comments. We would love to hear from you. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.